Kansas City Chiefs news has a very real problem on its hands right now. And the longer people try to dance around it, the more obvious it gets. This isn't about depth for the sake of depth. This isn't about adding another body just to say the room looks fuller. This is about the Chiefs staring at a receiver situation that suddenly feels a whole lot thinner than anybody wanted it to feel, and that happens to be the kind of thing that can quietly change an entire offense. When RASHEE Rice is not available, the whole conversation shifts. Because now, you are not talking about luxury, you are talking about survival. You are talking about whether this passing game can still function the way Kansas City wants it to function, or whether it is going to spend the early part of the season trying to patch holes with names that sound fine on paper but do not actually solve the problem. And that is where Chiefs news today gets interesting, because the easy answer is always to go hunting for the biggest name available. That is what fans do. That is what the internet does. That is what everybody does when the room looks shaky. Suddenly the same names start flying around like confetti at a parade. Tyreek Hill comes up, because of course he does. He is the shiny answer. He is the name that makes people sit up straight and start thinking about fireworks. But the truth is a lot less romantic than that, and a lot more useful. If Hill is not where he needs to be physically, then you are not solving a current problem by chasing a memory. You are just buying headlines. And the Chiefs do not need headlines right now. They need availability. They need reliability. They need somebody who can step into the offense and actually handle snaps, timing, and all the little ugly details that make a passing game work in real football, not fantasy football. That is why the Tyreek idea keeps running into a wall. If you are in May and a player is still not clearly running, catching, and looking like himself, then you are already behind the curve. And even if he is trending in the right direction, that does not automatically mean he is ready to walk into OTAs or camp and look like the version of himself everybody remembers. There is a huge difference between being close and being ready. That gap matters a lot more than people want to admit. Chiefs fans know this team is built on precision. Timing matters. Chemistry matters. Roles matter. If the receiver cannot do the full job, then the offense is back to guessing, and guessing is not how championship teams want to live. So yes, the Tyreek chatter will keep bouncing around, because fans can never fully let go of a reunion story like that. But from a football standpoint, it is a shaky road to bet on right now. That leaves Kansas City Chiefs news with the uncomfortable part of the conversation. The market is thin, the best options are imperfect, and the clock is already ticking louder than most people realize. The problem is not that there are no receivers out there. The problem is that the ones with real experience are either the best possible answer before the situation gets uncomfortable enough to force a bad decision. And that is a very different game. So the question for you is simple. Do you trust Kansas City to ride this out as is for now? Or do you think the front office has to make a move sooner rather than later? Now the conversation gets a lot more serious, because this is where Chiefs news stops being about wishful thinking and starts being about names that actually make a little bit of football sense. And right off the top, Keenan Allen is the one that jumps off the page for a lot of reasons. He is not the flashiest answer, and he is definitely not the youngest. But in a situation like this, that is not always the point. Sometimes the best move is the one that does not make everybody scream on social media for 5 minutes but actually helps the offense on Sundays. Allen still knows how to get open. He still understands spacing. He still gives you a veteran who can line up, read the coverage, and find the soft spots underneath without needing the whole operation built around him. That matters in Kansas City Chiefs news, because the Chiefs do not need a diva solution right now. They need somebody who can walk into the building and not act like the playbook is written in ancient Greek. That is why the Keenan Allen idea has some real life to it. He is not a one-for-one replacement for RASHEE Rice, because nobody on this list really is. But he can give you something useful. And useful is underrated when panic starts creeping into the conversation. If the cost is manageable, then suddenly you are not talking about making some giant swing just to feel better. You are talking about adding a professional receiver who can help stabilize the room while the rest of the roster settles in. And that is the part Chiefs fans need to keep in mind. Sometimes the move that feels less sexy is actually the move that keeps the offense from getting stuck in the mud. Nobody wins a championship by collecting shiny names. You win by finding pieces that fit. Gabe Davis fits that conversation too, and in a different way. He is younger, cheaper, and probably easier to imagine as a plug-and-play option without forcing the Chiefs to blow up the budget. That alone makes him worth a look. He is not going to be the same kind of player RASHEE Rice is when Rice is healthy, and it would be a mistake to pretend otherwise. But not every move has to be a headline. Sometimes a receiver just has to win some reps, take the top off enough to matter, and keep defenses honest. That is where Gabe Davis could sneak into the picture. He would not need to be the whole answer. He would just need to be part of it. And in a room that needs help, part of it can still be a pretty valuable thing. Juju Smith-Schuster is another name that keeps coming up, and he makes sense in a very specific way. He already knows the system, which automatically makes him easier to trust than somebody brand new. That kind of familiarity matters more than people admit. When you are trying to fix a problem fast, there is value in not having to teach every little detail from scratch. But at the same time, Juju also feels like the kind of answer that can quietly limit your ceiling if you lean on him too hard. He can take snaps, he can function, he can keep the machine moving, but if the idea is to replace real production, then you are probably asking too much. That is the trap here. You can talk yourself into safety and then wake up realizing safety did not actually solve the issue. And that is why some of the other names floating around the market are more noise than solution. Curtis Samuel has the speed label, but the production is not shouting at you. Josh Reynolds can do a job, but he is still more of a role player than a difference maker. Odell Beckham Jr. and Hunter Renfrow are the type of names people toss out because they are recognizable, not necessarily because they are clean fits. Chiefs news today has to be honest about that. Familiar names do not always equal useful answers. If Kansas City is going to spend money, it has to be on somebody who can actually help the offense survive the absence of Rice without dragging the whole thing down. That is why the real decision feels like a choice between two lanes. Do you go with the veteran who gives you immediate stability, or do you roll the dice on a younger option who might have more juice left but less certainty? That is the kind of question front offices hate because there is no perfect answer. But the Chiefs do not need perfect. They need smart. They need somebody who can come in, do the dirty work, and not force Patrick Mahomes to keep holding his breath every time the ball goes outside. And that is where this conversation gets even more interesting, because once you start looking at the market through that lens, the whole thing changes. Suddenly, it is not about which name sounds best. It is about which player helps the offense function without overcomplicating the situation. And that is the part I want you to sit with for a second. If you had to make the call today, are you leaning toward the veteran like Keenan Allen, the cheaper upside play like Gabe Davis, or the familiar system fit like Juju? That is the kind of debate that tells you where Chiefs fans really stand on this problem, because everybody has an opinion until the game plan has to show up on Sunday. Here is the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath all this Kansas City Chiefs news. The best move available might not even be sitting in free agency at all. And honestly, that is probably the part nobody wants to hear, because trades are messy. Trades cost assets. Trades force you to think long-term while you are trying to survive a short-term problem. But the deeper you look at this receiver market, the clearer it becomes that Kansas City may eventually decide the cleaner solution is not sitting on the couch waiting for a phone call. The cleaner solution may still be under contract somewhere else. Because once you get past the recognizable veteran names, the entire free agent pool starts feeling like a collection of patch jobs. Some are solid patch jobs, some are smarter than others, but they are still patches. And there is a difference between surviving a problem and solving one. That is what makes this whole Chiefs News Today conversation so fascinating. The Chiefs are trying to figure out whether they need a bridge or a real structural fix. Those are two completely different approaches, and they come with two completely different risks. If Kansas City believes RASHEE Rice's absence is manageable for a short stretch, then maybe a veteran like Keenan Allen or Gabe Davis is enough to steady the ship. That is the conservative path. That is the keep the machine running and trust Mahomes to elevate everybody strategy. And to be fair, that strategy has worked before. Patrick Mahomes has dragged imperfect receiver groups farther than most quarterbacks ever could. Chiefs fans have seen that movie already. But there is also danger in assuming the magic trick always works forever. At some point, the offense still needs reliable targets who can separate, understand leverage, and make life easier instead of harder. That is why the trade angle keeps hanging over this entire situation like a storm cloud. Because if the Chiefs reach a point where they believe this offense is missing a legitimate piece, then suddenly giving up a draft pick becomes easier to justify. Not painless, but easier. The problem is the timing. This upcoming draft class is being talked about like it could be loaded with talent, and Kansas City knows that. Giving away future assets for a temporary fix can blow up in your face fast if the player does not truly move the needle. That is why Brett Veach has to be careful here. One emotional move can create two problems instead of solving one. And honestly, this is where the conversation around names like Deebo Samuel becomes really interesting. Because unlike some of the older veterans, Deebo still gives you a different kind of weapon. He is not just a possession receiver. He changes how defenses line up. He gives Andy Reid flexibility, motion, physicality, manufactured touches. He creates stress before the snap even happens. That matters. Even if he is not the same explosive player he was at his absolute peak, there is still enough versatility there to make defensive coordinators uncomfortable. And uncomfortable defenses usually lead to good things for Kansas City. But there is a catch, and it is a big one. Money changes everything. Incentives matter. Expectations matter. Ego matters. The Chiefs are not in a position where they can just throw cash at every recognizable name and hope one works out. That is not how championship windows stay open. Every dollar has to make sense. Every move has to fit the bigger picture. And the moment a player becomes more expensive than the role he fills, the equation changes fast. That is also why Stephon Diggs feels like such a risky idea, no matter how talented he still is. The production might look tempting, but football is not played in a spreadsheet. Personality matters in locker rooms. Chemistry matters in huddles. Fit matters in championship cultures. Kansas City has built one of the strongest locker room environments in the NFL, and protecting that matters just as much as adding talent. Chiefs fans know this team operates best when the focus stays on football instead of drama. Bringing in the wrong personality at the wrong moment can quietly poison a season faster than people realize. So now the Chiefs are sitting in a fascinating spot. They can stay patient and trust internal development. They can make a smaller veteran move and try to stabilize the room. Or they can swing bigger and accept the cost that comes with it. Every option has risk. Every option has upside. That is what makes this one of the most important Kansas City Chiefs news stories of the offseason. Because it is not just about replacing catches. It is about protecting the entire structure of the offense before the pressure really starts building. And here is the bigger football truth that keeps coming back to me. This offense does not necessarily need another superstar. It needs reliability. It needs trust. It needs somebody Mahomes can look at on third down and know exactly where he is going to be. That sounds simple, But in the NFL, that is gold. Sometimes fans chase fireworks while coaches chase consistency. And if Kansas City makes a move soon, I would bet the front office leans toward consistency over splash, even if that frustrates part of the fan base at first. So now, I want to hear from you, Chiefs fans. Would you rather see the Chiefs stay patient and trust the current group, sign a veteran free agent, or trade for a bigger name receiver, even if it costs a draft pick? And which name actually makes the most sense to you right now? If you enjoyed this Chiefs news breakdown, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications so you never miss another Total Chiefs news update. We are pushing hard towards 7,000 subscribers, and every single Chiefs fan jumping in helps this channel grow bigger and stronger heading into the season. Share this video with another Chiefs fan who has been stressing about the receiver room, and stay locked in because this story feels far from over.